Good afternoon and welcome. It is Tuesday afternoon. It is pub day. It is the most exciting literary day of the week. And there are 7 days, so Tuesdays are the big one. Reading with Robin here for A Mighty Blaze. I'm very excited to interview Chelsea Bieker, who is a debut novelist. And that is always my favorite. I'm going to do an intro for you. Chelsea Bieker is from California's Central Valley. She is the recipient of a 2018 Rona Jaffe Writers Foundation Award and the author of Godshot, which is out now, and another book coming out, Cowboys and Angels. Her writing has been published in Granta, McSweeney's, Quarterly Concern, Catapult, Electric Literature, Joyland, the Cincinnati Review, the Norman School, No Tokens, Cosmonauts Avenue, and others. Her work has been supported by the MacDowell Colony and the Tin House Writers Workshop. She holds a BS in journalism from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and an MFA in creative writing from Portland State University. Currently, she lives in Portland, Oregon with her husband, two children where she teaches college for composition as well as fiction writing for Catapult and the Gotham Writers Workshop. Chelsea, welcome to this special A Mighty Blaze edition. So great to see you.
Hi, Robin. It's so wonderful to be here today, and I'm just so excited to be with you all for this pub date of my book, which is a little different than I expected, but we're making it work, and I'm excited to be here with you today. Thanks for having me.
Such a treat, and you're right. If anything, we're being flexible, thankful, flexible, and productive. I just wish you weren't in your pajamas on this very special day.
Oh, sorry. Should I put on something a little more festive?
I just think that, you're such a writer. You've been involved with all of these workshops and, you get the memo. You need to really sparkle on pub day. And I'm looking forward to the 2021 book and seeing what the heck you're going to be wearing. Cowboys and Angels. I can already see the outfit being constructed. I'm teasing you, of course. You look shiny, sparkly, happy, and just the way pub day should be.
Thank you. Well, I was so inspired by the cover of this book that was created by Nicole Caputo, who's just a genius and creates the most beautiful covers. And she came up with this. So I felt like I had to rise to that occasion.
You more than did. It is beautiful. And covers, as we know, really are very important. And what you also don't know is that's a pantsuit that Chelsea's wearing.
It's got legs. You saw my grubby socks. That's proof that I'm at home.
I love it. Well, don't you think there's something, yes, everybody is, there's pub day and there's events and we get dressed and all of that, but there is something really kind of cozy and, hey, if we're home, we might as well do it. Although I did wear pants. I decided it's enough with the leggings because I was feeling like college with the sweatpants or the leggings. So I'm, in your honor, Chelsea, I'm actually wearing pants. You're welcome. But I love that you've paired it with some fluffy socks. So you're working on this book. Obviously, you're involved with all of the writerly workshops. All of the greatest and the best of the best. Plus Rona Jaffe, who is like one of my heroes. That's amazing. Like, what does that foundation, that award, what did that allow you to do as it pertains to Godshot?
Yeah, that award was such a surprise and such a gift. I have 2 little kids at home, and it's always a struggle to balance writing and my art, and as well as teaching and my husband's job, and then as they get older, childcare and preschool costs are just astronomical. And on an adjunct salary, which is, it's not a salary, as we know, it's hard to figure that stuff out, and that creates a lot of stress. And so a gift like that, it alleviated some stress. And I love too, just what it meant in a larger sense about me contributing financially to my family through my art. I felt like just as an image, that was so important to show my daughter, and to, the foundation is doing that for women is so, so important. And so practically, it allowed us to afford preschool costs and childcare. And those sorts of things. You know, I didn't go to France and write my book. This money, I like used it for groceries and childcare, which
That's
to
neat.
me was like a total vacation. So
Right, vacations take many forms, and it's good that
yeah,
you can consider that a vacation since that's the one we'll all be taking right now.
absolutely.
Love to hear that, and I can only imagine that that was Rona Jaffe's intention. Well, the foundation was set up, but the way she was, and I was just such a fan of her work. It all, you know, that feels so good, and so glad
Yeah.
that you had that opportunity and that you won that and earned it. I think just thinking about all of the creatives and the writers and all the books coming out, and you've immersed yourself in that. So aside from what's happened with Pub Day and travel and touring, what were some of the other expectations that you had, and what did those feel like? And, you know, down to, you know, receiving those books, those gorgeous books for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a special moment to see them in real life. You know, you work on something for so long, and it is surreal to see it manifest in a physical form in this way, and to see other people engaging with it. I think right away after the galleys came out and the first few reviews started coming in, um, I was really struck by how emotional I felt just knowing that people I didn't know were reading the book and thinking about it in this critical way. And that meant so much to me. It felt like no matter what happens with it, that alone was worth it. Um, and that's been really special. And I just look forward to continuing those connections going forward.
And you'll
And I'm really honored that people would spend their time reading my book. It's a really cool engagement that I'm loving. So I'm grateful for every reader.
Well, that's the thing that I find so, I love talking about that because, right, in the beginning, the galleys go out, there are early readers, there are your close circle of readers, and there's that initial feedback. And you've written this, it's out there. People will read it, interpret it, connect to different things, talk about the books. So taking that leap from it being your project and those closest to you to the wider world. And I'm chatting on Pub Day with Chelsea Bieker. Her brand new book, God Shot, is just out. It looks kind of like her outfit. Chelsea will show it again. I mean, you just want to pick that up and then just like frame it somewhere. And you can visit her site at chelseabieker.com, and from there go to all of the social channels. And I always encourage readers, please follow, like, love, share, post, tweet, all of that stuff. And I don't say that lightly. It is really important. And while you're there, please follow us at A Mighty Blaze on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Just a few, you just click, click, click. Doesn't take long. Just click, click, click. So before the show ends, and I'm like, you're like, wow, is this what interviews are like? They don't talk about the book. Talk about Godshot and our 14-year-old protagonist and where the story started for you.
Yeah, this story, I think the heart of this story was really always about this mother-daughter connection in the book. You know, through the writing process, it took me about 6 years to write this book, and the external things changed and evolved, but at the heart, the search for this mother in the book and the longing and the struggle with the ambiguous loss of this young girl's mother and kind of the way she is forced to grapple with that grief, which that grief is really hard to define, right? When someone's not dead, they're still alive, they're just existing outside of you in this other life. It's really hard to have closure. It's hard to, because there's always a possibility of return. So,
Sure.
You know, we see this young girl go through waves of loving her mother through all of that. And I think that's really beautiful. And that was important to me to convey in this story, that their situation is really difficult, but there is an enduring love between them that remains. So I wanted to characterize that. And then, you know, I had a lot of fun with writing the place of this book. It takes place in this fictionalized, tiny little town in California, Central Valley, is farming town in the midst of this horrendous drought. And the people of the town are so desperate to bring back the rain that they kind of fall into this cult leader's army and
That, who doesn't
chaos
have a
ensued,
cult leader in a book? Yeah.
yeah.
And
So it was really fun to write. And it was emotional to write too. So I hope that both of those come off in the read.
from everything I've been reading, absolutely. And like I said, one of the downsides of all of these interviews is I haven't had an opportunity, but I've read an awful lot about Godshot, and it's totally my kind of book, and I can't wait to read it. And I would think writing about a 14-year-old would be emotional. I can only imagine you'd be putting yourself back in that headspace of, you know, what 14 feels like and how unsettling things are. And then you throw in there a mother-daughter situation, and that is, you know, such fertile ground for storytelling. And those are that age. I mean, mother-daughter stories I'm so drawn to, and coming of age stories where the character is in that age range are especially poignant. And it's a time of life where, I don't know, no matter how much you block it, you sort of can't forget those years. It's been described as haunting and full of humor and heart and true grit. And tell me about the Taxidermy mouse collection. I was very interested in that.
Yeah. So one of the most entertaining characters in the book for me to write was Grandma Cherry. So our narrator, Lacey, the 14-year-old girl, she goes to live with her grandmother after her mother vanishes. And Cherry's house is really interesting. And she's lived alone for a while, and she's taken up some hobbies, you could say. And one of them is receiving these deliveries from an infomercial of taxidermy tinies. So they become kind of her companions, and she tends to them so meticulously, and she loves them, and she hoards them. And, you know, it's a private joy that Lacey uncovers, and it becomes not private anymore for Cherry, but it's just one of her oddities. She's a real charismatic, kind of strange character, but I think she's really just going for it in terms of what she likes in that way.
I love that. Those are some of the parts about reading fiction, and I'm thinking of some other books, which I won't go off the rails because then I sometimes can't come back. Well, I do come back, but it's those characteristics and, like you say, hobbies or peculiarities or whatever that are just sort of woven through the story, where you're starting to read and you go, wait, what did I just read? And, you know, so it just enriches the story that much more. And for Cherry, it might just be, well, yeah, this is what I do. But then when someone else has their eyes on your business, it can look very different. And I thought that was really cool. And so I can understand where there's, you know, you have to write humor and lightening up a story that, we talk about the pastor. We didn't even get into that.
Well, just something you mentioned earlier, you know, it was important for me in the book to, you know, the landscape in this book is bleak. Everything's dead. It's monochromatic. Everything is beige. You know, there's no life. It's a Dust Bowl kind of scenario. And so it was important for me to contrast that with these vibrant jolts of color and kind of wildness, where the characters are really reaching out towards some kind of life. They're painting their lawns neon green. They're driving around in these magenta hearses. You know, you've got the sparkly robes, and so there's a garishness and a brightness against this really bleak, dead backdrop. And I thought that contrast was fun to play with, and I wanted to really lean into that. So that's kind of part of it.
Is that where the impetus for the gorgeous cover? I mean, the cover makes even more sense, obviously, in that way. And was this something that you workshopped and talked about, some of this vibrancy in the landscape? Because I think that's such a cool juxtaposition. And, you know, funny, smart, well-told, thoughtful character-driven stories are my thing. So, and I'm talking with Chelsea Bieker. Her brand new book comes out today. I mean, so it doesn't come out today. It's out. It's Godshot. And you can visit her at chelseabieker.com and then go to all other channels like love, follow, adore, /share. And I am interviewing Chelsea today in my role as interviewer a la A Mighty Blaze, which that outfit is like a Mighty Blaze right there. You were a mightily. Can you imagine if somebody interviewed you and like said nothing about the outfit? Like, wouldn't that be weird?
I'm happy you're acknowledging it. I mean,
So fabulous on so many levels. But I wonder if somebody would just be like, "So hello, Chelsea. So nice to meet you." Yes, not to say anything about that. So yeah, talk about Pastor Vern and a little bit about that part of the storyline.
yeah, I think a lot of this book is really the journey of faith that the women in this story go through. And so their first sort of exposure to faith or a church or a group is this really charismatic, bizarre, intense pastor named Vern, um, who says that he can create miracles. And he does create one miracle in the beginning that was witnessed by the town, and it really set them on a path of trusting him
Mhm.
in a profound way. And I think in this kind of destitution, these people are looking for any way out. They are looking for someone to walk in and be like, I have the answers. um, that's so attractive. They're isolated, they're not exposed to a lot of the outside world, so he becomes their portal to something much greater than this life, a portal to paradise one day. And cults are all over the place. I mean, people get sucked into this all the time. I think we're all susceptible to these sort of characters and these sort of intense personalities that have all the answers. That can be attractive in times of total destitution. So these people are really under his gaze, and they trust him and they love him. They do what he says, which is turns out to be a really dangerous thing in the book.
Yeah, that's the best part about having a bunch of people blindly following somebody looking for some salvation. And everything you just described scarily sounds like we're ripe for that right now, right? So
Yeah.
when you wrote the book, who would have known when it was coming out? And that happens when books come out, depending on the topic, but sometimes they are especially meaningful. And Godshot by Chelsea Bieker, I mean, what more can you give to the readers? It's right. I could just see the book club sort of drawing parallels and like who would be, because no one ever thinks that they would sort of fall into that. But we've seen many people, and thinking of charismatic, narcissistic leaders.
Can you think of one?
No one I want to discuss at the moment, but like I can see how some people would blindly follow that.
Yeah.
I read somewhere there was some guidance. Was it her grandmother that got guidance from romance novels? Was that?
Yes. Yeah. So when Lacey moves into Cherry's house,
I love
she
that.
discovers her mother's old romance novels.
Her mother's. Oh,
Yes.
you get a window into a parent's life to see what they read. I mean, I have my mother's books, all of her books. Those were like jewels in the house. I can remember the way they were stacked. So for Lacey to find her mom's book, so what does she discover besides that her mother read romance novels, but does that give her some more insight to what may have happened with her mom?
Yeah, I think it deepens her understanding of her mother, and also this idea that her mother has an identity beyond her caretaker, which as young children, we don't see our parents that way. It's only kind of as we get older, our parents become more complicated. We may have more compassion, more anger toward them as we see them as individuals beyond just our mother, our father. And in some way, uncovering the romance novels gives her this sort of startling glimpse into not only her mother's previous life before they were saved in the cult, but also just into sex. I mean, she has no sex education at all. She's never read anything where women are experiencing pleasure or women are in tune with their bodies or their desires in this way that's not attached to the church. I mean, in this world, the church governs the women's bodies. The women's bodies are seen under the lens of servitude to the church. And so these romance novels like totally shake her up. She's like, wow, this is like, I'm feeling something here reading
Yeah.
this. What's going on? And I think that sort of kicks off this longer journey of the book where she's reinventing her sexuality and her understanding of her body.
So cool. Were you a romance reader? Were there some that you were thinking of, or?
A little bit. I read sort of whatever I could find as a kid, and occasionally I'd stumble upon a romance novel here or there, and I remember being so enraptured by the sex scenes because I too was not receiving any sort of sex education. So it was totally exciting to see body parts named and
Yeah.
this really basic scene of someone having sex, which shouldn't be so scandalous, but it was. So those
Yeah.
always stuck with me.
At the time, yeah, in high school, I had such a strong affinity and a dear friend, and we would share them, and many of them basically the same, Love's Tender Fury, and
Mhm.
I don't know, I won't try and do titles, but that one I remembered, and, the flaming red hair and the emerald green eyes, and yes, this romance and sex. So I thought that was a really interesting way to
Mhm.
bring that in. Plus, when I'm reading a book that mentions books, I love books within books. And then,
Yeah.
such a reader, writer. Oh, Chelsea, this is so much fun. ChelseaBieker.com for more information on the book. It's Godshot. It's out today. The book does not blend. You cannot miss it. You will want to read this. Share it with everybody. And before I let you go, what are you reading?
I am reading an amazing book coming out in May called Boys of Alabama by Genevieve Hudson.
Ooh,
Queer, Southern, Gothic,
I'm writing
amazing
it down.
story. You have to read it. It's like nothing you've ever read. And
Awesome.
I love the way it just reinvents the Southern Gothic territory and reimagines Alabama and this really original feeling lens. So you got
That
to check that
sounds
one out.
awesome. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. This was such a pleasure reading with Robin for A Mighty Blaze. Chelsea Bieker, enjoy the rest of Pub Day. Keep in touch, and we wish you all awesome things with Godshot. I
So
can only imagine how far and wide it will go.
thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.